5 minutes past 1 o'clock now, the former Conservative Party Treasurer, Lord McAlpine, has given his first broadcast interview since being wrongly linked to child sex abuse. He was implicated by the BBC Newsnight programme, even though it didn't name him. Well, he's spoken of his shock and hurt. His solicitor has made it clear that action will be taken against all of those who identified Lord McAlpine in the mainstream media and on the internet. The peer's been speaking to Becky Milligan on Radio 4's The World at One.
In an article in The Telegraph, Boris Johnson, the London mayor, Conservative, said to call someone a paedophile is to consign them to the lowest circle of hell, and while they're still alive. Is that where you've been?
Absolutely. I think it describes pretty much what happened to me in the first few days of this event.
Can you describe it a bit more to me?
It gets into your bones, it makes you angry, and that's extremely bad for you to be angry. And it gets into your soul, and you just think there's something wrong with the world.
Well, that's Lord McAlpine. Now Ofcom has launched investigations into ITV's This Morning and the BBC's Newsnight over complaints that they breached broadcasting standards. It comes after the Reading East Tory MP Rob Wilson wrote to the media watchdog asking if any rules had been broken when Philip Schofield on This Morning confronted David Cameron with a list of alleged paedophiles which he said he'd found on the internet. ITV today have repeated an apology for what happened, saying it had taken disciplinary action. The investigation into Newsnight relates to an interview which wrongly implicated the former Tory Treasurer Lord McAlpine, as I said, in child abuse. The BBC is expected to reach a legal settlement with Lord McAlpine in the coming days. Let's speak now to Martin Campbell, who's the chairman of the Broadcast Journalism Training Council. He's also a former Ofcom Chief Adviser. What rules could these two broadcasts theoretically have broken, Martin, first of all?
Well, everything seems to have been shoved into the pot of generally accepted standards, which is probably not surprising because the extent of Ofcom's powers over the BBC are actually quite limited. I mean, traditionally, they've only looked at complaints that raise harm and offence issues, which used to be called taste and decency. And complaints of accuracy and impartiality lie firmly within the BBC Trust, so they're looked at in-house. But there is a memorandum of understanding between the two organisations that they would liaise over fairness and privacy complaints. So that appears to be what's happened here with the BBC complaint. But it does raise, as well as clear standards issues, it also raises a much wider issue concerning the internet. And I think Rob Wilson deserves congratulations for spotting the wider issue here. And that really is the regulation. At the moment, there isn't really any of the relationship between traditional media and the internet.
Does that mean that the regulations, the current regulations, need to be rewritten almost in light of this?
Yeah, I think they do, because the world changes, and it's not unknown for the broadcasting code to be rewritten. I wrote part of the one that's in use at the moment. They get rewritten because they have to adapt to what's going on, and what is going on at the moment is very worrying. There's a worrying growth, if you like, of what I would call broadcasting arrogance, probably born out of a frustration that websites, blogs, newspapers, I mean, they can create waves in the world of so-called news on a daily basis without the likes of Ofcom hovering over them. And what a lot of traditional media is now doing, it seems that all the careful checks are carried out when broadcasters are generating their own stories because they have to. But when the internet becomes involved, there's a temptation to push people out to the internet without the sense of responsibility that viewers and listeners have come to expect. Almost as well, we're not saying it, but somebody else is. And that's not a good enough thing to allow to carry on.
Would you say that both of these incidents are examples of broadcasting arrogance?
Yeah, I would. Absolutely. No hesitation at all.
And of those incidents that you may have seen in the past, are these some of the more serious ones?
Yes, Oh, absolutely. I mean, as you heard, I would agree totally with Boris Johnson. I mean, to allow these sort of accusations to swirl around and to push people towards them to go and have a look at them is disgraceful.
It's interesting what you're saying about the level of Ofcom's involvement, certainly in the BBC complaint. Do you think that suggests that the BBC Trust is somehow failing in its role?
I'm of the opinion that the BBC Trust needs to be restructured in exactly the same way as the BBC itself needs to be restructured. It's I don't want to get into the sort of cliches of not fit for purpose and this sort of thing, but the days of trying to regulate internally, regulate yourself, have passed. I think, and I think the trust was not set up in the best way.
Just finally, should both of these complaints be found should Ofcom uphold them and rules are found to have been broken, what will happen?
Well, what would happen if the BBC were found, if you like, guilty? I mean, Ofcom's not a judicial body, but if they found that the BBC had broken rules, then it is quite interesting as to what could happen to them. I mean, it does have a commercial arm, so it does have its own money. But in the end, if you were going to fine them, you'd be asking license payers to actually fund the fines as well as the output, which would be a bit bizarre. I mean, I think that would probably end up in something of a restructure. And as far as This Morning is concerned, I think it would. They have the powers to fine, and I'm sure that they would in this case. I mean, no one wants to prejudge, but I mean, it's pretty sure what happened here, and I would be very, very surprised if Ofcom delved into this and came out and said, no, everything's okay.
Well, we await the results. Martin, thank you very much for that. That's Martin Campbell, who's the chairman of the Broadcast Journalism Training Council, also a former Ofcom Chief Adviser. It's 13 minutes past 1 now.